Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, pro physique athlete, back with another episode on Swole Radio. I'm joined by Dr. Mike Israetel, who is co-founder of Renaissance Periodization and Team Full-ROM, and has now become the champion of science-based bodybuilding on YouTube. Welcome back to the show.
Uh-oh, we're in a bad place, Mr. Wong, if that's the case. Dr. Wong, sorry, how could I? Thank you for having me on, man. It's always a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. And I'm out there trying my best. So
it's been a while. We've got a special episode today where we're going to be touring Dr. Mike's Lambo collection.
You're welcome. This is very few people get to see this, and most of them are dead.
All right. But even better than that, we'll be talking about Dr. Mike's current training setup. This is going to be a really interesting episode, I think, where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of his current program, and I'm sure everyone's going to be able to learn something from it. So I was thinking maybe just as a initial just broad snapshot of talking about your training organization in terms of the split.
Yes.
So what's your current training split?
Yes. Is it okay if I speak in sort of relatively advanced terms? And if anything you think want to be cleared up for your audience, please ask me and I'll clarify. So I run currently it's a 6-day split. It's a modified pull, push legs, or basically, so pull, push legs. It's in that order. I could say push, pull legs, but I just want to get the correct order. So it's pull, then push, then legs. And it is a floating split, which is a type of asynchronous split. A floating split means you have, let's say, 6 sessions to hit in a microcycle. And I don't mean week, I mean microcycle. Almost always, week and microcycle mean the same thing, but not always. In a floating split, what you have is, in my case, it's 6 workouts. And I have 5 microcycles and then a deload through the RP Hypertrophy app, which is how I program all this. And I literally just run it through the whole app. And because I have the 6 days every microcycle, sometimes when my fatigue is well managed, when I'm not super busy traveling or working on YouTube stuff or RP app stuff or whatever, then I do 6 days in a row. And if I'm feeling really froggy and the workouts are super easy, or it's the beginning of the meso, I might even do 7 or 8 workouts in a row. No problem. And however, if I'm not recovered on time, if I need an extra day of rest and recovery, or even just an extra day of doing lower calories and doing cardio because my muscles haven't healed yet, but I can still burn some fat, I'm in a fat loss phase right now, what I do is I insert the off days as needed. So in most cases, that'll be 1 to 2 off days at the end of each half microcycle. So I'll do pull, push, legs, rest, start again, or rest again if necessary, and then go pull, push, legs, and then it's microcycle 2, aka week 2. It could be 9 days later. Start, I do that. But even if it's a busy schedule thing, or if it's I did pull yesterday, that means push is going to be today, but my chest and triceps legitimately straight up just didn't heal from last time, then I'm just going to rest another day. So the rest days can be inserted anywhere. So this all sounds complicated, but the floating split is the following. You make a program just like you would for yourself. You train 3 days a week, you train 4 or 5, whatever. I train 6. And if you make it a floating split, you write it just the same way in the RP Hypertrophy app, except the app asks you to either label it like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or it just asks you, it default labels it. And if you don't change it, it just leaves it like this: day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. So for me, it's a 6-day program, and they're days, not days of the week. And then you just use a simple rule. If you're healed and your schedule allows for it, you train. If you're not healed and you need more days off, or your schedule is like, dude, you could train today, but it'd be a dog shit workout because you have 18 hours of filming, you have to fly to LA, blah, blah, blah. Hollywood stuff like I tend to do, meetings with Weinstein and Epstein and all the Steens. But if it's that kind of situation, then you also take an extra day off. But then when you can train, you do. When you can't, you don't. That means that folks that are super busy with careers and children and shit like that, some days, some weeks, they'll be in the gym twice, which is totally good enough for maintenance in almost all cases. Some weeks they'll be in the gym 6 times and they're crushing that shit. And on average, they'll be in the gym 4 times a week. And so the floating split gives you an unbelievable amount of power to make it into workouts when you can. There's only one caveat for the floating split, maybe 2. One is some people just like days of the week corresponding to certain things. They need the week completely prearranged, which is totally fine. It's like, this is how people do shit. The other thing is a floating split takes an inherent deep motivation and drive to train.
Mhm.
Because if you adopt a floating split as a beginner or early intermediate, you're not really in love, addicted to the training process yet. You take 3 days off. You know what I'm saying, Bill? Then you take 4 days off. And then you're like, do I even train? And you kind of just skip a week. So floating split doesn't say, hey, Tuesday is leg day, shut up and go. Some people need that. And for those folks, floating split's not ideal. For me, up until very recently, so I used to use a floating split back as kind of an intermediate, and it worked awesome for me. Then I got into the Monday through Friday shit, and it worked great. Just recently, for this prep that I have coming up, prepping into some summer shows, I realize I'm pretty busy with work and YouTube and all this other shit's kind of a big deal. And I don't always heal like I think I'm going to heal, especially in a fat loss phase. The shit will bite you in the ass. You'll be like, oh, I'm supposed to heal, but I'm feeling really weak and my legs are actually still sore. This is stupid.
Mhm.
By being more flexible and realizing that the science supports this kind of training split, and I can really quick say how, and then give you the floor, Bill, really quick. But because it's the logical thing to do, it can work really well. And here's how science supports this. It turns out, and we've known this for some time, the difference in training frequency per muscle group between training a muscle group twice, 3 times, and 4 times a week is a very small. And you would think, like, how could it possibly be small? Most times, if you're like, I do something 2x or 3x or 4x, there are going to be massive changes in how much I do shit. Like, if you got, paid by the hour to do your job, if you work 2 times more, you would think, okay, I'm getting roughly 2 times more, maybe even more than that because of overtime. However, that doesn't happen in muscle growth. And what we find in the literature is that 2 versus 3 versus 4x, very subtle, very contextual, absolutely very small differences in muscle growth. And since in a fat loss phase, maintenance of muscle mass is really the goal, you get even more slack cut. You say, how is that possible? Here's how it's possible. It turns out every time you come to the gym and train, 2 things happen. One, you get a muscular protein synthesis response from that. It leads to muscle growth that session, but you're like, duh. So you start thinking, fuck, I got to do 2, 3, 4 more of these sessions, I get more muscle. Here's the second part. The second part is this. Every time you expose your muscles to a certain kind of working out, the sensitivity to future hypertrophy drops, and it resensitizes over a time course. And that time course is on the order of a week. So if you train 5 times a week, your chest, each workout that you do, especially after the first or second one, grows you very little muscle. Some, for sure, so it still matters, but very little additional muscle. But if you train chest twice a week, by the time you do your second workout, your chest has forgotten the stimulus so much, the sensitivity is back so high that it still grows a fuckload of muscle for you. This is true in many other things, including eating high protein meals. If you eat 9 meals per day, your body's like, I'm going to grow this much muscle. That's pretty much it. If you eat 4 meals a day, every time you eat another meal, your body's like, holy shit, protein, fellas. Hell yeah, it's been a while. Let's really get this into anabolism. So the floating split is awesome because you end up being like, okay, do I train shoulders twice a week or do I train them 4 times a week? Well, it depends on what kind of week I have. If a floating split, I make it in 4 times a week, I train shoulders twice. If I make it 6 times a week in certain conditions, I train shoulders 3 or 4 times. Is there going to be a big difference between those two? No, because if I don't train for a while, my next session is more hypertrophic because the sensitivity is, again, really high. If I train really often, the session to session to session time span is so short that the muscles are still quite resistant to hypertrophy, and then you get this overall blunting effect. So for me, the floating split is a really good answer to that problem. Concerns about like, dude, I only made it to the gym 4 times a week. Like, you get great gains. But what if I could have gone 5 times? Well, if you had a magic fucking genie pop out of the bottle and clear your schedule for you and make you recover infinitely well, great. The trend genie, that doesn't do anything for your schedule. But if you have a magic genie, great. But if you live in real life, a floating split can be fucking awesome in that regard.
Yeah.
Sorry for the long rant.
No, that's great. I think that people talk a lot about autoregulation in terms of RAR and proximity to failure, but people don't often talk about it in terms of frequency, which is what you're doing with a floating split. And I really like that because, I mean, not everyone has like a dedicated 5 hours a day to dedicate to bodybuilding. Okay, so moving on, if we could touch on exercise selection. What are your main movements in the program right now? And particularly if you could highlight some of your favorite movements or underrated movements that you don't often see people using.
Okay, sure. So it's pull, push, legs, repeat. On the pull day, I do calves. I know, lame, but here's the thing: some muscle groups you just have to throw in.
Yep.
Like I'll post on my, I post my like RP hypertrophy app training kind of every session I do. I post it on Instagram. I'd be like, pull today with, my RP hypertrophy app, and someone will be like, calves on a pull day, and I just want to sarcastically, I don't mean this as just a joke, cynically be like, motherfucker, where do you put calves? And it's like leg day, like, no, motherfucker, what? You do calves before you do quads. Your calves are your limiting factor, like cramping up on leg press. That's stupid. Who does calves? Who does anything after quads? Nothing. After you're done quads, you're done. You're done for the day. So calves, forearms, in a sense, side delts, you just kind of have to throw them in somewhere because they don't interfere with anything much either. It's totally fine. Agreed. So I do calves on pull day as the first thing. I do 2 back exercises, generally an exercise that focuses on rowing, rhomboid development, erector development, with some lats, of course, and then an exercise that focuses more specifically on emphasis on lats, be it a vertical pull of some kind, be it kind of an overhead arcing motion of some kind. Whatever I choose, it's going to be more lat biased, lat focused. And then after that, the fourth exercise for that day is going to be a side delt move, some kind of upright row, some kind of lateral raise. I'll get to the specifics of some movements I'm using in a sec. I just wanted to give people kind of the general architecture. And so that's the pull day. And so then I do push day after that. Push day is depending on how I'm structuring things, generally it's a chest exercise first, then it's a tricep exercise, and then that's either it and I move on to some other shit, which I'll mention in a second, or I do kind of a combination chest tricep exercise, like close grip deficit push-up. Like, what is that? Is that chest? The app will categorize it as a chest exercise, but it really fucks your triceps up, especially if you just did skull crushers. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I'll put in that third movement, and depending on what emphasis, it could be more of a chest movement, it could be more of a tricep movement, or it could be kind of just what I call a distributed compound, which is kind of even among all those. So I'll do that for my pushing. Then I'll do my biceps work. So a bicep exercise, something quite serious. How many times a week are my biceps being trained? Well, it's complicated, right? Because directly once, or sorry, not per week. Well, directly twice per week because I have 2 of those days a week, right? But man, back day, the pulling absolutely stimulates biceps. This is scientifically uncontroversial, and it matters. And in a fat loss phase for me, it's at the very least anti-catabolic stimulus. So I call it half a training session, and then I'm training biceps 3 times a week, which is fucking awesome. They heal pretty fast. It's really good. So I'm doing pushing exercise, optional push, biceps, and then because my delts recover quickly and they need more volume, and because just training delts twice every 4 or 5 days or once every 4 or 5 days isn't like super ideal for me because my delts recycle fast, I'll do 1 myo-rep set of delts at the end of the pushing workout. And it's usually the same exercise I did yesterday on pull, but lighter for high reps. So for example, one of the exercises I'm doing on delts right now is the Atlantis lateral raise machine with a top pause. And I'll do myo-rep match sets for like 17 reps straight set, 17 rep myo-rep set, 17 rep myo-rep set with normal breaks between. That's pull day. Push day, instead of doing 130 pounds on that for sets of 17, what I've been doing is I put it on 90 pounds. So after I'm done with all my curls, I'm pretty tired. I just have to do a little bit something for delts for that extra anti-catabolic stimulus, maybe a little bit more anabolism. I'll throw 90 pounds on, significantly lighter. I'll warm up a little bit. And then I'll do a myo-rep set of like a total of 35 of those. Like the first 20, I just knock out. Then I rest for a little bit. I knock out another 8. I rest for a little bit. I knock out another 5. I just keep doing it. Mega pump, mega metabolites, good deal of tension, time under tension, but it's just 1 set. So psychologically and from a systemic fatigue perspective, because imagine, Bill, if I just put in like 3 more sets of delts at the end, I'd be like, dude, fuck this. After fucking push 1, push 2, push 3, biceps, 3 fucking sets of that shit. And those are my rep match sets. Fuck that. I gotta do more delts, like not enough, but 1 delt exercise at the end works super fucking well. And then because I call that, half an exercise because it's only 1 set, I get to train side delts also 3 times a week on average, which is really good. Very robust stimulus. And then my leg day, goofy part coming in, totally makes sense. Forearms. I train them at the beginning of leg day, and you're like, what the fuck? What? How? Why? Here's the thing. Nothing I do in my leg day requires my forearms, like literally, right? I don't do stiff leg deadlifts anymore because of like a jiu-jitsu neck injury. So I'm just like, okay, well, like I don't need my forearms. And it's a nice way to warm up. And here's the beautiful thing about forearm training. Bro, it takes literally like 6 minutes. I can spare that. And then I end up training forearms twice a week on average. And that's pretty dope. Now, also, forearms get trained a ton from pull training, a ton from push training. So, like, just 2 times a week, direct forearm training for me works really well. I do forearms, then I do some kind of hamstring movement, then I do some kind of quad movement, and then I do some kind of glute movement. And that, what I just described, was repeated twice in one microcycle with different exercise selection. And then it just goes for 5 microcycles and then a deload. That's my current plan. And now finally, like a fucking cocksucker that I am, I can answer your original question of what exercises am I using. Is it okay if I went on that rant? Because I kind of wanted to get people to get the, okay.
Oh yeah, no, it's helpful.
Any questions on that, or did that all kind of answer all of its own questions?
Yeah, no, I like that structure. It's intelligent. I think it's very intelligent what you're doing with the biceps as well, taking it off of back training, splitting it up and increasing your frequency indirectly.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a new split I came up with, and it's been just doing super well. Now, just before I get into the exercise stuff, some of the exercises I'm using are really good. I have to say this for my own peace of mind. Guys, what I just said is not the best split. It is not the answer. It is not hashtag how you do science. It's not even a split I've been using for more than a few weeks. I've used tons of great splits before, and there are tons of great splits, and it matters a ton about what you need, what your preferences are, what your goals are. It's a good way to do it, but it's not the optimal way. It's like what Dr. Mike says you need to train forearms and 4 legs. No, Dr. Mike never said that. Is it potentially an option? Yes. So that's all I'm going to say. Because, you give people your split and they're like, this is it. You're like, no. There's no magic here. Splits are very, very individually applied. So exercises. I have been really giving some thought to exercise selection lately, more than usual, because of 2 things. One, I'm getting towards the end of my bodybuilding career. I'm going to be 40 in like 6 weeks or something. And I need to understand that the amount of ego that I can put into training has to dwindle to 0 or close. And the amount of longevity promoting exercises, let me put that better. Exercises that have a very low probability of giving me a catastrophic injury that subverts my attempt to do bodybuilding as well as I can for the next few years before I retire has to go to 100. So I'm doing a lot more length and partials. I'm doing a lot more higher rep sets. I'm doing a lot more slow eccentrics and deep pauses, not because these things are categorically better. The length and partials are quite interesting in the literature currently and seem to be very effective. And to me, in my own experience, insanely effective. But because I have to get serious about the kind of training that works for me and is ultra safe, even if it's not the sexiest thing in the world. Like, for example, I can hack squat a lot. It's a gift. I've been working on it, but it looks cool. 6 plates, blah, blah, blah. It's awesome, right? But I'm going to be taking my next hack squat workout and going from doing 590 pounds, 6 plates and change, to doing 455. But I'm going to do bottom 2/3 partials, MyoRep style, with 455. And like with that amount of weight, with bottom MyoRep partials, it'll fuck you up.
That's painful.
Big time, right? Nuts. But is it as ego satisfying as full-ROM, total lockout, controlled reps with 6 plates? No. But I have to bring my mind to the place where like Israetel, you want championship trophies? You want the best physique you've ever built before you retire? Or do you want to be like, yeah, man, used to fucking do 6.5 plates on the hack squat, brother? Like, that is worthless. And as a young person, as a beginner, as an intermediate, it's insanely worthwhile. Yeah, you should be overhead pressing a fuckload. You should be bent rowing a fuckload. You should be hack squatting a fuckload. That should be your goal as a beginner, intermediate, even early advanced. But as you become more and more advanced and injury reduction becomes a high priority, you have to figure out, how do I rig these exercises and choose exercises in a way that is maximum stimulus, minimum fatigue, and especially injury risk exposure? Is it a sexy way to train? Not really, man. But that's the way that I think works pretty well. So to that end, on hack squats, I'm doing the bottom end partials. I'm going to be re-rigging my leg press to do the same. I'm now doing leg extensions, which is weird for me. Turns out I have never really done them, and thus my rectus femoris is like insanely unimpressive. It basically just disappears in the poses in which it's supposed to pop. And like no one would ever in the right mind accuse me of having small quads. Like you've seen the shit on social media, the pictures, the videos are like, dude, your quads are enormous. Like sweet, sweet. There the fuck is the middle of your quad? It just doesn't exist. And so I've been taking the leg extension and sliding the seat back as much as possible and lying back in it so they can pre-stretch the rec fem, and it's been destroying me and making my rec fem sore for fucking days after I do it. So one of my leg days, at the end I do leg extensions and then kind of a drop set, 2 bodyweight squats to get that little extra bit of burn. Here's the thing. Do I like it? No, I don't fucking like. I hate leg extensions. Like it's a mind-sucking exercise. It's the worst, right? Some people love it. No disrespect. It's just for me, I fucking hate it. Am I gonna do it because it's gonna make a difference in my physique? Yeah. So that is kind of where I'm going. And I got one more exercise to share, and we can go through and talk about more of them. But I'm gonna be putting out YouTube videos on the channel. We are gonna be putting out YouTube videos on the channel for this. But the lying dumbbell curl and the lying cable curl for kind of 2 different reasons.
God, lying dumbbell curls,
dude. So the lying dumbbell curl is an exercise that, what is the, to use the common vernacular, is slept on, but people are sleeping on it because they don't even know it exists. And we're going to make a whole YouTube video about how awesome it is, blah, blah, blah. I just tried doing it recently. And I was just like, oh, this seems like it should work. It blew my biceps the fuck out of the water in just a few sets. I now, for the first time ever, have reliable week on week on week DOMs for 3 days in my biceps. How? Imagine an incline curl. All it is an incline curl, right? And you just take the incline and you put it all the way to flat. So you're just lying down on a bench and you're curling with ultra strict control. You curl beneath the bench to touch the dumbbells gently if you're flexible enough to do this, and if your arms are sufficiently long and the bench isn't too super high up. You go until you either can't go or until you touch the ground with the dumbbells gently and then come back up. What that does is it does 2 things. One, it exposes most of the tension to your biceps at the lengthened position, which is completely the opposite of a standing curl and actually scientifically just much more optimal. And the second thing it does is it puts the biceps in a profound stretch under that deep tension. 2 different things, because if you think about it, if I'm right here and I curl literally like this, like as people are seeing me do this now, hopefully they see the video. If it's just the audio, hey guys, pretend I'm just, I don't know, pretend in your head. If I'm doing here, technically my bicep isn't lengthened here. Isn't stretched here. It's lengthened, but not stretched. It's not stretched because the bicep flexes at the shoulder joint too. However, maximum force at the lengthened position, no force at the short position because gravity is pointing directly orthogonally here. This is the lengthened position. If I was to pull back on this joint and get my arm all the way back here, now it's the stretched position and the lengthened tension. Milo Wolf, who's my go-to guy on all things range of motion and science, basically said there's recently a paper that actually compared those 2 conditions, stretch plus lengthened versus just lengthened, and they did roughly similar numbers as far as hypertrophy was concerned. And to me, that was kind of encouraging, and it pointed to me the direction that we already know theoretically and from practical experience that stretching itself is hypertrophic, but not big H hypertrophic, small H hypertrophic. It's not a huge yield, but positioning your muscle into the lengthened portion, because there's a difference between lengthened and stretched. Like if you squat almost all the way down in a squat just below parallel, your muscles are lengthened, but they're not stretched. You're going to feel your quad stretching as you sit down. Turns out the lengthened position is really hypertrophic. So with the lying bicep curl, I get both. And the dude has blown me the fuck away. I use 25-pound dumbbells, and the shit nukes me. I did 3 sets of 15. I'm literally sore right now, and I did this shit days ago. It's wacky, and it's the first time, again, I said I ever have repeat bicep DOMs, and I'm honestly kind of like not upset, but kind of like scratching my head as to why I did standing curls for so long. And there's nothing wrong with standing curls, standing barbell curls, dumbbell curls, cable curls, but the force curve is backwards to what you ideally would need it. So for those folks listening, in your training, try some lengthened bicep work, try some lying dumbbell curls, try to some shit that stretches your bicep out, because just like stiff-legged deadlifts, and a really insanely positioned seated leg curl machine, not just put tension on your hams, but stretch them, that's what this does. And it's a revelation. And it is like, I literally, Jared saw, we just did a video for this with Jared and I trained together. Jared pointed out to me, I got stretch marks in my biceps on video. Like it started with nothing. And he said, every rep I did, the shit got more pink, more pink, more pink, and then red. And I was like, holy fuck. He's like, I literally just watched that happen because the pump is out of this world. And I didn't know this level of training existed because I was never out of the box thinking enough to try this. And I could have surmised this would have been a good way to train. But one of the things that kept me from doing it is this bullshit mentality I'm ingrained in me that I'm trying to get rid of. And it's just fucking do the basics, bro. That fucking hardcore, full range of motion. Like dope. Those are all dope things, but you can do better than just the basics. As an advanced lifter, think about it a little bit and expand your mind to the exercise you can do. And look, listen, some of them look goofy and some of them suck and they don't work that well, but you'll find a few gems if you're a little bit more open-minded. That's more advice to myself than to anyone else. So that's what's been going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Line curls are like my favorite bicep exercise ever. I like discovered them one of the old bodybuilding books from a long time ago, like maybe Joe Eater from like the ancients, and I started doing them. They're absolutely my favorite. But anyways, I really like what you were saying about, retooling your exercise selection as you become more advanced, not just saying, hey, I'm just going to stick to barbell rows and back squats. And although those are great exercises, you will unlock a lot of nuanced, opportunities by trying out other things. And particularly if you're able to apply science to that.
100%. And especially now with the new science of length and partials and stretch and hypertrophy, we can take a look at a lot of old exercises and really try to ask the question of like, how close to the science of optimization, at least in regard to stretch and tension and lengthen positions, how close is this? Like here, take the squat, for example. The squat at the bottom of the movement is the hardest. The vectors the most force into the quads that are the most stretched in the lengthened position. All right, the squat's great. Let's take another look at another classic exercise. The very high chair, 45-degree body angle, top end only, like most leg extension machines allow leg extension. Not just top end only. Most leg extensions machines won't stretch the quads much at the bottom. And the force is actually highest at the peak contraction, the requisite force to complete the rep. And it's kind of easy at the bottom and kind of hard at the top. Because you're also in a 90-degree position with your hip, the rec fem is insufficiency anyway. And like, is that a really great exercise? It could be for some people, for sure. And there's no good or bad movements, but you have to ask if it fails on the grounds of like stretch and length of position, properly moving the body to expose musculature. Maybe try another exercise that works a little bit better. And so for me, the classic exercises and new exercises are all candidates for the same level of analysis. And once you get done through the level of analysis of like what biomechanically should work best, that's not enough. You have to take it into the gym and try it yourself, because there are exercises that are biomechanically optimal that I'm just like, this sucks, I don't feel shit. And exercises that are biomechanically like meh, that are like, this is amazing. So for example, bent rows, barbell bent rows, they're not ideal from a biomechanical perspective because it's too hard at the top, not hard enough at the bottom. You have like a systemic fatigue component having to lean over, but my whole back gets blown to bits when I do high rep barbell bent rows. Explain that. Well, I can't explain that. Crap load of rhomboid involvement, crap load of stretch under tension at the bottom. The spinal erectors have to have an isometric component, and they get fucked up. Your whole back, use your whole lats, use everything. It's just a crazy psychotic pump, and that's how you put meat on your bones. So every exercise has to come with theoretical checklist of, am I doing the right thing? And then try it. And some exercises work, some don't. And of course, variation is a thing ultimately where the best exercise for biceps, the lying dumbbell curl, is dope until you've done it for like 8 months and you're like, fuck this, man, my elbows hurt, I hate this goddamn exercise. A couple months later you can bring it back into the program, but there are many other good exercises to try in the interim.
Good stuff. Moving on, I want to broaden out and zoom out a bit in terms of training variables. What does training volume look like for you in broad strokes?
For me personally,
yeah,
so typically for exercises like side delts, biceps, calves, forearms, I will do kind of one exercise, really. For chest and triceps, it's 1 to 2 per session. And then for back, it's typically 2 to 3, mostly 2 exercises. For quads, it's 1 to 2, and for hamstrings, it's just 1 exercise. And each exercise I do roughly for 2 to 5 working sets on average, closer to 2 at the start of the meso, closer to 5 at the end. So if you think about, like, I train quads on average, let's say twice a week. I have 1 to 2 exercises, so let's call it 1.5 exercises on average for quads per week, and I have an average of 2 to 5. So let's say, 3-ish, 4. Let's call it 4 sets. I do a lot of 3 and 4 sets, so let's call it 4 sets. 4 sets times 1.5 is I am legitimately doing 6 work sets of quads per week. That's my current volume. For hamstrings, it ends up being quite similar. Maybe for quads, it's like 6 to 8 work sets. For chest, I do 3 to 5 sets or whatever. Let's call it 4 sets on average, but then it's an exercise and a half there, so let's call it 6. I fucked up the quad thing because on average 1.5. Yeah, okay. So the quads isn't 6 sets; it's more like 10 sets, right? And for the chest, it would be like 10 to 12 sets. For biceps, because I train them more frequently, it's more like 10 to 15 sets. And for back, it's kind of a how you measure it thing, because I'll typically do 6 to 10 sets total for the back per workout, and an average of 2 workouts a week. What is like 12 to 20 sets, right? But back is kind of hard to count, because if it's just like an overhead pull down situation thing, like lat prayer, it's like only really the lats get hit and like rear delts a little bit, not much else. But for a row, I mean, it's the whole back, right? But then again, in a row, the lats aren't, technically positioned in a stretch, so they don't grow a ton. So I just count the whole back as this whole big thing. But back gets more volume because it's this whole big thing, right? Like hamstrings, like they're pretty easy to target. The back, you need a little bit more to fill in the blanks. So basically like 1.5 times the volume for my back as for most other muscle groups. So basically for almost everything, just to sum up really, really succinctly, my weekly volume for most muscles is something like 10 to 15 sets, work sets per week. And the exception generally is the back, for which there's something like 15 to 20 work sets per week on average. And for biceps, it's also 15 to 20 probably. And if you count it properly with the back being involved, and for delts, it's probably 15 to 20. So biceps, delts, back, 15 to 20, everything else 10 to 15 roughly. But we have to zoom in there a little bit because there's an extra quirk. The extra quirk is a lot of those sets, not all of them, many of those sets are often things like my rep match sets. And just for folks not in the know, my rep match is when you do one straight set and just as many reps as you can, let's say 2 from fail or 1 from fail, whatever that week is from fail for you. Let's keep it super simple. Let's say to failure, right? 18 sets of laterals with the 20s to failure. Put them down. Okay, you're 18, right? Open up your up here, put your type in 18. Okay, great. Actually, as a setting for my rep match, so you can just select that. And if you select that setting, automatically it populates your next set as 18 reps. And you're like, oh, there's no way I can do 18 reps in the next set. I'm so fucking tired. Maybe I can do like 12. No worries. Do 12, rest for 5 to 10 seconds, do another however many you can, and keep doing that rest, do some reps, rest, do some reps, 5 to 10 seconds of rest until you get 18 or whatever that first set was. So when I do 4 my rep match sets, the first set is an all-out set, 18 or whatever it is. Second, third, and fourth, there could be as many as 3 to 4 myo-rep mini sets inside each work set. So to put it another way, more technically, there are some sets in which I have 3 or 4 approaches to muscular failure per set. That is a different level of hypertrophy than just doing a straight set. It is a more hypertrophy, flat out. And more fatigue, of course, right? It's just a bigger stimulus because like this isn't, I'm not working with my 18 RM anymore. This is now my 9 RM, but I'm just doing it for 18 reps. This is a big deal. So when people would see these numbers from me and say like, okay, so basically Mike does 10 to 15 or 15 to 20 stimulating sets per week, work sets per week per muscle, fine. but so many of them are my rep match, etc., that really I would bump all of those up by like 1.25, 1.33. So it's much more true to say that work set equated for straight sets, I'm doing something like 15-ish sets, 12 to 18 or something for half of my muscle groups. And for the faster recovering, bigger half that I need to attend to more stuff, back, biceps, side delts, I do something like 20-ish, 18 to 22. So it's really bumped up a little bit more from there. So to put it a little bit more simply, I do around 15 sets for most of my body, and for the rest of it, I do around 20 sets per week. So it's on the high end of the traditional recommendations of 10 to 20 because of the inclusion of myoreps and things like that. So when people see me like training on Instagram, and if you slide through all my training videos, it's always app screens of what the app says. I've gotten this feedback before, like, dude, you did 3 sets for hamstrings? Like, yes, however, let me explain. And it says myorep match, and most people are like, what the fuck is that? I'm like, explain. So I did 17 sets of lying leg, or sorry, 17 sets. Good God, can you imagine that? 17 reps of lying leg curl, close to failure. I rested a traditional amount of time, 1 to 2 minutes, whatever, 4-factor rest model until I'm not out of breath and I'm ready to go. Then I did my next set, but that next set was, I said 18 on the first one, then I did 12,6 on the second one with a 10-second break. It's really like 1.5-ish, 2 sets, depending on how you count it. Then on my third set, I did 10, and then I did 5, and then I did 3. That's 3 sets in a sense, but because each one doesn't count, it kind of counts for like 2. So how many sets of hamstrings you do? It looks like 3 on paper, but because they're myorep match, it's kind of the hypertrophic stimulus and the fatigue of like 5. So now where it looks like if I have a week where I do 3 sets of hams early in the week and 3 sets of hams later in the week, this guy does 6 sets of hams a week. Like, nah, it's more like 10. And then you're like, okay, this actually is much more reasonable of a volume and not much of a deviation from what I traditionally do. However, I am training with slightly lower volumes now because I'm trying to really emphasize the prep and really emphasize the fat loss and to really keep my fatigue down. And my fatigue cap, now that I'm older, I can feel that I don't get rid of fatigue as quick as I used to. And I don't think it's as much an age thing, but the fact that I'm like really trying to full-fledged push the fucking career and the RP and the apps and the YouTube. So I work more at my job than I've ever worked in my life by a huge factor. And so I have to be cognizant of the fact that I have a lot of fatigue to dissipate and I can't just crush everything out. So the bonus points of doing slightly more volume for slightly more gains kind of disappear when you're in fat loss phase. So this for me is kind of like somewhere between my minimum effective volume and kind of halfway to my MRV. I'm staying mostly in that zone. At the end of the mesocycle, of course, the MRV comes down to meet you anyway, because you're like, dude, I can't do this anymore. But most of the time I'm trying to keep it a little bit easy on the volume so that I can just have great training that's anti-catabolic, and then my body will do the rest for me. And so far, knock on wood, it's been working super fucking great because I get in this mindset, maybe you've been in it too before, Bill, where you like, it's fat loss phase, pre-contest. I got to do more sets, more. I'm going to be the best. And it's like your body's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? I don't even have any calories. Where the hell am I supposed to grow this muscle from? And so I'm trying not an easier approach, but halfway between this is like hard approach, normal approach, easy approach. I'd say I'm like right between easier and normal, and it's working super, super well for me. That's my experience so far.
Yeah, I like it, especially when you're in fat loss. I kind of liken prep to trying to land a burning plane. It's going down, it's all blown up, and all you're trying to do is holding it to try and hold it together as long as you can before you inevitably crash.
Yes, you're not trying to do like acrobatics for the air show crowd beneath you. You're like, oh, I can do a loop-de-loop. Like, no, that's off season. Right now, you just got exactly the burning plane. That's the best analogy I ever heard about contest, right? Because people say it's like landing a plane, but it's really much more accurate to say like you're landing a plane with like terrorists on it, or it's burning, or like half there's a zombie virus in the back. Like you got to really be careful.
Yeah. Okay. And then going to some other things. You already alluded to some of these other intensity techniques. What intensity techniques are you using, and what do you like?
So I have made a couple of changes, mostly because of literature on length and partials and a couple other things. So I love for intensity techniques, my reps are great. So for example, I'm like, I have 35 reps with 90 pounds on a lateral raise to do, and I'm just going to do them and take 5 to 10 second breaks between them to keep going. Why? One, it's an enormous time saver. 2, it sequesters metabolites like crazy, which I believe there's still some evidence for those potentially having a hypertrophic causality. And 3, you don't have a systemic limiting factor because like you're not out of breath doing fucking lateral raises, not like with squats. So you don't need any more than a few seconds of rest to get in some more quality reps. You add all those three things together, it's kind of a winning formula. And again, just to make this very clear, it's not the way to train. It's not like if you're not doing my reps, you're an idiot. It's like, this is a really cool way to train that you should try that really works to attend to all those three factors that I was talking about. So my reps are great. My rep match is great. My rep match is especially awesome when if a muscle group that like is kind of a pain in the ass to train. It needs a lot of volume and it can recover from a lot of volume, and it needs lots of approaches to failure to get jacked. Like, sure, if you have great chest genetics, you do 3 sets of 8 for flies and your chest gets blown up. But like some of us have to do a lot more stuff for other muscle groups, like my forearms, my calves, my side delts. Like they could just take a fucking beating, and you know they need the MyReps just to keep the shit. Like I'm not doing 8 sets of 8. Fuck that. You'd have to rest 3 minutes between all of them. No. So with MyRep match plus MyReps, you can get all the work done in a much shorter time, less systemic fatigue, and it's just everyone wins. So I've been doing a lot of that. Also, I have been doing more of an emphasis on the lengthened and stretch position. So for example, calf raises on the leg press. You know, you put your feet down at the bottom of the leg press. I used to consider it failure if I couldn't lock out completely at the top. I don't do it anymore. My failure point is if I can't get to the 90 degree position. So calves are here at the bottom. If I can get to here, I'm good. If I can't get to here and I just stop here, I'm not good anymore, which means that in the first several reps, just because of momentum, I'm going well beyond that line, and that's totally fine. But I count it as failure when I can no longer cross that 90 degree barrier. And what that does is it directly emphasizes lengthened partials and more lengthened partials as I get more fatigued. And because the calves are ideally positioned muscles for the length and stretch, I mean, there's no better muscle to do that with, then what I've been doing is I've been doing leg press calves like that. And instead of focusing on that peak contraction, I focused on the lengthened stretch position. It has made it so that I do the same number of sets of calves as I always did, but they get way more pumped and way more sore. And I've physically seen them just get bigger over time over the last several months. And I was like, man, I was really fucking myself by doing this like stupid, like I've got a ASMR, get the click at the top. And you know what I mean? That peak contraction, which is cool for like, you know, it feels nice. It's great for total body function. If you're training for overall health and wellness, like you should, I think, still take everything through a full range of motion, because like life will make you do a full range of motion if you don't want to. You're trying to lift your kids out of like a fucking like one of those rubber boats, and someone's like, "Can you get them?" You're like, "Oh, I only do length and partials, so I actually can't lift them to the dock." Like, thanks, idiot. So basically, but because I'm trying basically for pure hypertrophy in most respects, I am including more shit like that, and it has made a big difference. Here's another one. I have a Smith machine at home that, like, unfortunately, the first curve is backwards. It's hard to lock out, but it's easier at the bottom, which once I got it and played with it, I was like, oh, God damn it. But otherwise, it's a really good machine. So I've been doing skull crushers on it like normal, but I do a set of close grip bench, my rep set of close grip bench on skull crushers. Basically, I have like 32 reps to get, but I can only get like 15 reps in the first set. I rack it. I rest 10 seconds. I might even walk around the gym once, do a lap, 30 seconds, and then come back and keep cranking until I get to like 32 reps total. But because I'm grabbing close, it's for triceps and chest, I would typically lock out every single time. I don't do that anymore. It's soft lockouts, really 3/4 lockouts. So I'll come up to here, and as soon as I feel that sticking point where I have to press through the machine, I just stop. I go back down slowly, spend a little time at the chest, come back up. Dude, I didn't even snuck up on me. I was like, that was a good workout. I got a really good tricep pump. And my shit got so fucking sore. And I was trying to figure out, they didn't do a lot of volume. Usually a close grip at the end doesn't really do much for me. Because I was doing that bottom 2/3 focus, it really made a big difference. I was less fatigued, and I got way bigger pump, and I was sore for longer. And that comports with everything I understand about soreness and pump. I know I'm the only person saying soreness and pump matter. I swear to God, I'm going to be right in the end about this, or I'll just retract my views and say, sorry, people get it wrong in science sometimes. But it really comports with the fact that like length and partials have a lot of empirical support now, and they get me sore as fuck and pumped as fuck. And I'm like, okay, there's some fucking dovetailing there. It makes sense. So that's the kind of stuff I've been doing, and it's been working great. Another thing is I used to put pads on the pull-up because I assisted pull up. I would put pads on the machine, so I get a really good contraction in the back, which I think is valuable a little bit. It felt really good, but I was like, you know what, man, the literature doesn't really support this a ton, so I just went to the straight machine, and now I clank at the top basically here, and I'm like, I wish I got that squeeze, but instead of focusing on the squeeze, I focus on the quick clank, and then instantly engaging the eccentric and really letting myself be pulled apart, super staying with it through the stretch. And that's like, my lats are getting DOMs consistently. And I'm like, okay, this fucks. So that focus on the eccentric, that focus on the lengthened position. And guys, listen, lengthened position doesn't mean you need to be doing the bottom 1/3 of the movement only. The bottom 2/3 can make a big difference, especially if the machine or the implement or the exercise is persnickety at the lockout and costs you a lot of fatigue at the lockout. Skip the lockout. Just stick to that bottom end partials. It's working fucking wonders for me. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, that's smart. And realizing that you don't necessarily need to, have like either full lockout, full range of motion quote, or like just bottom 1/3 of the movement, that there's a spectrum in terms of how you do this. And you can actually play with your own machine's biomechanics to just get a very nuanced application of what you want.
100%.
All right. Taking another step back and looking at the bigger picture, how do you set up your training mesocycle?
So I generally, it's a little bit of a different question for off season versus pre-contest. Because off season is a little bit more open-ended, and I usually like to just take that one mesocycle at a time. So I look at what muscle groups I want to prioritize. I look at my amount of time I have to train, so on and so forth, and then I build out from there. Sometimes I'll also look at the calendar to see like, well, when are we going on vacation, or when is there a work trip or a work sprint that I have to like be on deload for, basically. And then I'll arrange the number of microcycles in order to kind of make that happen. For pre-contest, it's a little bit more specific because I really want to chart out which mesocycle I'm doing when. Because like when you get 4 to 6 weeks out from a show, you had better be in that final mesocycle. And then the exercise selection is something that's very specific because you want to choose really, really safe movements. Like, it doesn't mean that absolute safety is the number one concern in the gym. First of all, the movements are absolutely all very safe to begin with. Exercise is one of the safest things you can do. You want to do unsafe shit? Go skiing. You get fucking hit a tree and you're gonna get fucking killed. Skiing is like 2 orders of magnitude more dangerous than lifting weights in the gym. Like people just never look that up. It's funny because like your grandma, you'd show her like a video of people skiing. She'd be like, oh, that's nice. Show a video of like Ronnie Coleman pulling 800 pounds. She's like, oh, isn't that dangerous? Like, no, skiing is way more dangerous. Like, really? Like, yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So lifting is very safe, but that's not a consolation to you when you pull your hamstring 1 week out before your fucking important show, or pull your bicep and something fucking goes and you're like, God damn it. If I just picked a lift with slightly higher reps, that has slightly more ability for me to be not as athletic because I'm so fatigued and execute a large degree of control. If I picked a movement that really was easy on my joints, I would not have to have paid this price. Then now what the fuck am I supposed to do? So I want to plan my mesocycles in such a way that 4 to 6 weeks before my final run, I get to plan a brand new meso that has basically, for lack of a better term, coddles the living fuck out of me, so I can arrive unaltered. It's kind of like if you watch, like my wife watches like cooking shows and like that make a chocolate statue kind of show. At the beginning of the 4 hours when you make the chocolate statue, you make big moves. You get the saw out, you get the fucking mold out, you make all the chocolate, big shit happens. And like you take risks. The thing could break, you can build it back up again, no big deal. But in the last 30 minutes, you put the glaze on with a little fucking brush. And some people are like, man, what are you talking about? Like, you got to train into the show, go hard. Yes, go hard, definitely. But hard means close to failure. Hard means pushing your volume limits. Hard means getting in your own head and saying some shit like, is this really me trying, or is prep getting to my head? That's hard. But the exercises you should choose and the rep ranges you should choose to go easier on your joints, easier on the probability of injury, so that you can go put in your music, plug in, get out, and not have a chance of getting hurt. And I think honestly, dude, some of that old guy shit about like high reps but etching the striations, obviously high reps don't fucking etch striations. Nonsense. It's not how the body designs itself. But they had some wisdom in there, even though it was rationalized wrong. And the wisdom is, yeah, you're probably better off doing sets of 15 to 20 reps on average at the last few weeks before the show, simply because of the absolute reduction in injury risk. Because they watched guys do sets of 5 to 10 before the show, and look, they look great for keeping fullness. But then you pop your pec off, or you hurt your shoulder. You hurt your shoulder in the off season, you just prioritize more arms and more legs and more chest, and your shoulder heals in a month, and you go back to it. It's like it never happened. What the fuck do you do if you hurt your shoulder 2 weeks before the fucking show? You can't show up with fucking shoulders that just don't pop, and the judges are like, hey man, we gave you second place, you have a great look, we just need a little bit more delt mass. I mean, you're a fucking tragedy of that shit. You spent 18 fucking months preparing for the fucking shit, and then just because of some dumb shit you did 2 weeks ago, because you were like more ego and less science, all of a sudden you have kind of soft shoulders on stage, and that's why you don't get the nod. So that's kind of how I tend to think about it.
Yeah, I really like that strategy for prep, and I will personally periodize my exercise selection and rep ranges ahead of time. So I'll have pre-planned, changes where I will switch towards less fatiguing exercises, but I'll keep the volume and relative intensity the same, still pushing hard.
Yes, I actually save exercises that I'd like to do now for later because I'll need them then. Like exercises that have very low injury risk, that are still very hypertrophic, basically a huge stimulus to fatigue ratio. I won't draw them out of my belt and fire them at the beginning, only because I want them to be fresh and ready for me later. I just had to do a really quick leg workout in a jiffy, so I just did some belt squats, but I won't be doing them again for weeks because I'm saving them for the end of prep. Because belt squats for me are like a huge SFR exercise. There's no axial loading, right? You don't crush your spine with belt squats. And I have a Matt Wenning belt squat machine, which is fucking awesome. It's smooth as fuck. And so for me, like I do one MyRep set of 30 reps and I get sore for 5 days. Oh my God, bro, you're in pre-contest. You're fatigued as fuck. You don't want to be in the gym. All you got to do is get that fucking trance music right and get one goddamn set. The set lasts 9 minutes because it's a MyRep set of 30. You're like standing at the top with knocked out, like, holy fucking shit, I'm going to die doing this. Did you get through one goddamn set and you're golden for the next 4 days? Hey, man, I love that shit. But I'm not going to use it yet. I'm not going to overuse it because it just won't. If I get to doing 8 weeks of this shit now and I get to the last 4 weeks and my body's like, dude, I don't want to do fucking belt squats anymore. Bill, what the fuck am I going to do? Go back on hack squats and put hundreds of pounds on the bar? No, thank you. When I'm like much drier and much leaner and much more tired. Here's the thing that I think a lot of times when I explain shit, there's a lot of shit in the back of my head to rationalize it, but I don't get all of it out. So let me give one little tidbit. One of the big predictors of injury risk is how unathletically you're moving. The micro adjustments that you make, if you're not as good at them, you have a more high probability of injury because you kind of scoot your knee out a little bit this way. You don't make the adjustment, you get hurt. Fact one. Fact two, athleticism and the fluidity of movement correlates very well to your level of systemic fatigue at any one time. If you're fresh and not fatigued, you're grooving, you're athletic, you make adjustments, micro adjustments, you can't even tell, but you get through shit easier. Your probability of injury is less. As you get more fatigued, especially towards the end of the show, the margin of error shrinks and you get to be more Frankenstein-like. You know the feeling where you're showing up and you're like, I don't even know what the fuck's going on here. And your probability of doing something not smooth and not athletic and getting hurt increases. So what I want to do is save exercises for later on which I don't have to be with it and athletic or whatever, which is another reason I think some of that old wisdom bubbles up. Guys would say like free weights compounds when you're off season, more machines before the show. It's not magical. It's not about the machines. But if you can lock in to a safe position and not need to rely on athleticism to fix micro adjustments. Bill, how many times have you seen someone get hurt doing a fucking chest supported row? I mean, you got to try to get hurt on one of those. How many times have you seen people get hurt on a bent row? Ooh, with a barbell? Ooh, it's happened a few times. And if you're athletic and you're less athletic and you're tired as fuck and fatigued as shit, coordinating whole body complex movements becomes marginally more injurious. I don't want to fuck with any of that. Could I high bar squat 4.5 plates for a set of 10, 1 week, 2 weeks pre-contest? Yeah, what the hell do you think Anavar and Trent are for? Hell yeah, I could. Is it worth the Instagram video for me to pull my adductor a little bit and then have to hit my poses differently on stage and have some inflammation there, making my quad look weird? Not by a mile. So, makes some sense.
Yeah, there's some wisdom right there. And in terms of how you run your mesocycle, how do you apply progressive overload?
I don't. I let the RP hypertrophy app actually take care of that for me entirely. So it's programmed to add as small of a weight increment as possible every single week. If it can't add one of those because the weight increments are too big, so for example, dumbbells, right? You have the 20 pounder, you have the 25 pounder. It assumes people don't have 22.5 pound dumbbells that you could program in that you do, and it'll start from there. But if you have like week one, you do, 3 sets of 10 with a 20, it's not going to be like, hey, next week 25. The fuck, 25 is a huge jump. It's like going from squatting 200 to 250, benching 200 to 250. Like one does not simply. So then it'll add rep by rep. So week 1 is 10, week 2 is 11, week 3 is 12. So basically, my progression formula is either adding 2.5 to 5 pounds per week, depending on the exercise, and doing the same reps, or adding 1 rep per set while keeping the weight the same. That's my progression formula. It's always my progression formula, and it really fundamentally doesn't change. Sometimes on pre-contest, if I got a little too close to failure last week, I might do this next week with the same sets and reps and load exactly, but with the most excellent technique and seeing what my RIR is like. And sometimes it's like, oh, now it's less RIR, and then I'll do more volume to make a bigger overall stimulus. But that's quite rare. Mostly I'll just keep going and adding a little bit of load and a little bit of reps. And very specifically for pre-contest, the magnitude of the additions has to be very small. For off-season, it can be bigger because your fatigue tolerance and dynamic is just completely different. Here's what I mean by that. Here's how comical this gets. I squatted 585 and the hack squat 6 plates for a set of like a set of 12, set of 11, set of 10. That was my, and then I did lunges or some shit. The next week, guess what I did for a set of 12, 11, and 10? 590. But that's 2.5 pounds on each side. You ever see what a 2.5 pounder looks like in a hack squat with 6 plates and then a 2.5? It's comical. And I've had people be like, dude, really? And I'm like, dude, pre-contest, I'm going to take every little gain I can. And I'd love to take bigger gains, but motherfucker, they ain't coming for me. They ain't nobody giving away free gains, man. I would love to be that strong, but you don't gain that much strength in a pre-contest. And if you are gaining that much strength, you're either taking too many drugs or you're just not dieting hard enough because you could be getting leaner faster instead of gaining a ton of strength. So my goal with pre-contest is to essentially gain the bare minimum amount of performance that keeps me categorically away from having lost performance. My performance is either the same or just a little bit higher. And if I can just do that, I can stay safe. I can still progress. I can ensure my muscle doesn't come off my body. Because here's the thing. If I can't do 590 for a set of 12, 11, 10, but I could 585, performance is down. Fatigue is too high or I've lost muscle. But if I can do 590 and the next week 595 and the week after 600, think about this. I started the mesocycle at 585 and I ended it at 600. 15 pounds over the course of 4 weeks. The fucking exercise started at 585. What are you, crazy? You could have put on 15 pounds each time. Off season as an intermediate, 100%. Super advanced pre-contest, could I put more on? Dude, yeah, just take more fucking VAR and I can put on anything I want. I take tread, I would really do whatever I want. But then you get crazy fatigue, probability of injury goes up. And this is something that's a little bit unique to being enhanced. When you're enhanced, you can take enough enhancements that 2 things happen. 1, you feel and neurologically are able to lift way outside of your traditional amount. I've had some friends who were like, the question of how strong are you right now, they answer it in 2 ways. Am I on trend or not on trend? Because there's a strong for trend and there's a strong for regular me.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's fact 1. Fact 2, some of these compounds, specifically trend, do 2 things. 1, they make your muscles so much stronger, so much faster than your tendons. I don't have to explain how that increases injury probability. And 2, all anabolics with high doses do that. Trend specifically also literally weakens your tendons at the same time. So the idea that you're just like, yeah, man, if I feel good, I put fucking weight on the bar. Do not do that as an enhanced person. And as a natty, I would still say it's good. Just get the little gains on a fat loss phase. Forget contest prep. This applies on contest prep too, but even on a fat loss phase, it applies a ton. If you can just make a rep here and there, a couple pounds here and there increase every couple of weeks on your fat loss phase, and definitively say, I lost no strength this entire 8 weeks of fat loss, dude, you won. Victory is assured, because you reduced your probability of injury, you reduced your fatigue, and you lost no muscle. And someone could be like, well, if you went a little harder, you could have gained a muscle. Yeah, gain 0.2 pounds of muscle for how much of a multiplier of risk? Am I going to 5x my risk for injury for that? Am I going to 10x my risk of injury for that? Dude, if I gas up on tren and var, I'll promise you I could do a set of 15 with 635 on the hack squat. That's a 25 on top of everything. Yeah, could do that. And then I do the next set of 14 and my fucking right quad comes off the bone. The fuck am I going to do then, right? Not worth it. And if you're natty and this doesn't apply to you, let's say you have a big ass result on the hack squat, way more than last week. The week after that, you're so fucking tired. You're like, dude, I'm not as strong as I was. Like, I overreached. Hell are you supposed to do? Overreached on a mass phase. You take a couple days off, eat some cookies, you're back, hammer it. Amazing. What do you do when you overreached on a fat loss phase? Where the fuck is that extra healing supposed to come from? You're in a hypocaloric diet and you got a show in 4 weeks. There's no time for bullshit. You got to make small margins. My last analogy, I promise to shut the fuck up after this. When you have a new thing you're testing out, a new car, you can do donuts with it, you can ramp it, you can gas it, no problem. The stakes are very low. When you're trying to get the Apollo moon module lander to lock into the fucking capsule, you got to these tiny little adjustments to make sure you will only one chance to get that thing in the hole. This is going to age poorly as far as analogies go, but you know what I mean? Like when the stakes are big and when you're close to the thing, tiny overloads are the way to go. And I'm a really big believer in that. Does it kind of take a little bit of the magic out of like feeling a fucking trend and fucking just hammering in psychotic sets with all your veins and everything when you're really lean? Sure. But like nobody gives a shit about that at the show. And if you take third because you really fucking felt your energy instead of first because you fucking did the right thing, it's no consolation.
Mm-hmm. How do you progress volume across your mesocycle?
Okay, so 2 things. Great question. This is me being ultra pedantic, and I don't really mean this. I don't look at it as progressing volume. Volume is adjusted and not progressed. Volume is auto-regulated and not progressed. I progress on reps because to me, progression is a feed-forward strategy. Next week, I do more. I don't care how I feel. I do more because you either fail the test and deload or succeed and keep going. I progress on load. I don't progress on volume. Volume is adjusted and auto-regulated, which means if I feel like it's plenty of volume, just like neurologically, if I'm getting my muscles weak towards the end of a session, because if your muscles don't feel weaker than when you started in any session, I promise you, you're not training hard enough. If I get a really good pump and I get at least some fatigue that lasts a few days after, I don't change a thing. That's my volume. If I'm in a situation where I'm training and I barely get a pump, I barely get sore or not at all, and I like literally I'm supposed to train Monday and Thursday for chest, but by Tuesday night, I'm like, dude, I'm 100% healed. I can train chest now. I'm underdosing the volume. So then I do a little bit more. Next week, instead of 5 sets, I'll do 6. If I'm still really beat up from last time, if I have overlapping soreness continually, like I'm supposed to train chest Thursday, but I'm still sore, next week I'll ramp down and go from 5 sets to 4. So I auto-regulate my volume based on my ability to recover. The ideal recovery is you trained really hard, you got really fucked up, and just before you had to train again was the first time you felt great to go hard again. That means you used all of your recovery time for muscle growth, at least as much of it as you could. If you basically could train much harder and still recover, increase your volume. If your volume is too high and you can't recover, decrease your volume. So every single microcycle is micro adjustments in volume. Luckily, the app does that shit for me. It'll ask me how healed are you, how sore are you, blah, 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 how pumped, and then it'll make all the sets in the future. But I look through the app for any given workout that I'm doing like now, like, the app's definitely guessing high for me on here, and I'll subtract a set. Or like, no, I can do more here. I'll be fine. I'll recover. I'll add a set. So there's always daily session auto-regulation, but most of it is informed by the app algorithms, which I would just do in my head anyway, but the app does them procedurally, so I don't have to. So basically, to sum it all up, that's how I auto-regulate volume, is on a recovery basis. If I can comfortably recover from it, I do more. If I can barely recover from it, I'm really being pushed, I don't change a thing. If I'm way under recovered, I reduce. What ends up happening in the real world for me most times is I'll start with a little bit lower. I'll start with like 3 or 4 sets of something. I'll get up to 5 or 6 sets and I'll just flatline there for a few weeks because it's always pushing my recovery. The added load, the added proximity to failure, the added reps make every session so much more hard than the last, they don't need to add any more volume, because then I would be way over my recovery. So it's not the thing that goes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sets. It goes like 3, 4, 5, 5, 5 sets deload. In real life, that's what ends up happening most time.
Yeah, I like it. It's the fully auto-regulated plan, right? It's the best way to get the most out of your training.
100%. And the thing about auto regulation is it takes some wisdom and it takes some insight to do well. So you have to be a little bit more experienced to pull it off. So beginners shouldn't auto regulate. They should just get a regular 3x5 program and just learn how to do the lifts properly. But once you get more wisdom, auto-regulated program is kind of like asking someone, do you plan on pushing the gas and the brake and steering the car when you go somewhere? They wouldn't understand what you're saying. Like, how the fuck do you think cars get anywhere? We're like, well, the train isn't auto-regulated. The train just goes the same speed and stops for the same amount of time at every stop. You're like, yeah, but the train can't flex around anything. If the tracks are broken, the train is out for 2 weeks. I'm fixing the tracks. If you're a little bit sore in your lats and you should be training again, you can do something about it. Auto-regulation is basically the idea that you send the body a signal and you see what comes back. If good things come back, you don't change anything. But if some things comes back that's saying you're training a little bit too easy or a little bit too hard, you make the adjustment and you go from there. And then you get kind of the best theoretical results that your body's capable of, because your assumptions may not be correct. Sometimes you do 3 sets of leg curls and like, you're like, man, this is nothing. And you wait a couple of days, you never got sore, never got tired. You're like, fuck, I can do more. Sometimes you do 3 sets of leg curls, different condition, different machine, blah, 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 different technique, length and partials. And you're like, oh my God, I'm not going to heal for another 6 days. That next decision of what to do I need 4 sets of leg curls next week? Or do we need 2 sets of leg curls next week? Is a very much dependent on which experience you have. So auto-regulation, a different way of putting it, is just like adjusting to your body's needs and demands. It's that simple.
Yeah, I love it. So keeping track of time here, we're going to be winding down a little bit, but I think people have learned a lot from your training techniques, and we'll have to continue the conversation in another time. What are some new developments coming up for RP?
Fuck if I know, man. Some of them are usually, so here's the thing about RP. It's a very good question, but I can't answer it a ton because we have all sorts of projects in development usually, but we don't like to talk about them much. We like to just kind of release them. I feel a little bit like a much stupider junior league pathetic version of like Sam Altman when they're like, when is GPT-5 coming out? He's like, we're working on cool stuff. Cool shit is happening. When it comes out, we'll let you guys know. But there's not like next month, expect it, because here's what happens. People just start swarming, and just like we get DMs, RP Instagram gets hit up. People are like, hey, I know the app's getting an update. Should I wait to get this next one, or blah, blah, blah? And it's just like all these questions are like super inundating. And we don't also, the questions are like, in a sense, they're fine because we love talking to the people that buy our products, but we hate to disappoint people and tell them the same answer all the time. Like, well, it's still in development. And the way developmental projects go is we really can't tell when it's going to be done. Like hopefully next month, but maybe in 2 months, shit comes up, right? You think you have a product almost all the way through. You start doing alpha testing on it. And you're like, we need to re-architect very big parts of this. And you're like, okay, JK, that's 6 months later. So I don't want to tell people, like, I'll tell you guys this. We're working on big updates to the RP Diet Coach app. I'm not supposed to be saying this. I use the developmental version of it. I'm like alpha tester #1 for it right now. And I'm in love with the thing. I live my whole goddamn life by it. And I never used to use the RP Diet Coach app because it wasn't designed for hardcore lifters like me. It was designed for kind of CrossFit folks. Now the Diet Coach app is going to be tailored to fucking hardcore bodybuilders and CrossFit folks at the same time. It's the version I'm using isn't even the version we're building. The version we're building is a super powered version of that. But what I'm using is already better than the version that's out. Don't get jealous. It's full of bugs, which is why I'm using it. So half the time it works great. Half the time it's like, JK, you can't even do this one. God damn it. So I hit the engineers up. So I'm using that, testing that. Sometime in the next year, probably we'll release an update to that. It'll be a big deal. I'm alpha testing the updated version of the Diet Coach app. The hypertrophy app. It's just the UI UX is way better. It's really, I was replacing exercises with it and I hit the button and it just did it for me. And I was like, I used to hit 2 more buttons in the old version for this. This is the slickest thing I've ever seen. So I'm working on that. And then we're also working, and I can't say too much about this because again, it'll just be like, we don't want to disappoint people from it taking a little longer. We're working on a crap load of content, tons of videos, formal courses, entire courses and curricula for getting people who want to train other folks, either online or in person, a collegiate level education for like $1 a day. We're working on that. the whole thing has been, we've recorded 200 plus video lectures. We're making test bank materials, and it's going to be a thing probably within this year, 2024. It's going to be a thing, and it's going to be amazing because people can just learn the fuck out of all this shit. But YouTube, we teach a lot on YouTube, right? But YouTube's kind of like videos that do well for the algorithm. So it's learning, but it's also fun, and it's kind of like a little bit sporadic. Like you get this topic covered here, you get this topic covered there. I'm originally a professor, and so in my soul, I have to keep things structured. I love a curriculum. Like a curriculum is the way you learn for real, for real. We cannot do that on YouTube, because if we just turned YouTube into that, people would just be like, this is dumb. This is not for everyone. You know what I mean? So we're doing that on the back end, and when we develop that, it's just going to be an awesome resource. It's going to be, I'll say this, it's going to be the kind of resource that I wish I had when I was younger. I just didn't. So that's kind of some of the big stuff we're working on. Oh, there's always other shit, but yeah, hopefully folks can understand, like, we're doing our best. We're going to release it when it's ready and doesn't suck. So sometime in the next 2 years, you can expect all of those things to be released, but hopefully it's more like 6 months for most of them and less like 2 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. Doing a killer job out there, and make sure you check out Dr. Mike on YouTube, Renaissance Periodization. The channel has been killing it. I think Mike is the ultimate combination of knowledge and entertainment.
Yes, if you like your knowledge to be mostly wrong and your entertainment to be pathetic Jewish man that makes fun of himself and cries at night, I totally agree with you, Bill. With very kind words.
That was great. And make sure you check out the RP hypertrophy app. Obviously, if Mike's using it, I mean, it's doing some great stuff. So I'll be linking Mike in the description below. And thanks for being on the show again, Mike.
Dude, huge pleasure. Let me know anytime. I'll come back and rant to nowhere.